with my
I
guy,
like it.
the Fink. Clay
Yeah,
Fink.
I got a little pushback. I think when I posted the clip of the FSU.
Oh, and they saw my logo?
Somebody was like, Clay, when I said you should go cover the Canes, I didn't actually mean it, or something like that. It's like, guys, it's a national podcast.
Yeah, so that was on me. I got to get my background right. I got a nice Florida. This is a neutral Florida spring. This could be a Florida State spring. This could be a Florida spring. It could be a Miami spring. This is just the free state of Florida springs here. So we're neutral here. But Fink, man, great show yesterday. Covered a lot here, but you gave me a name that I had never heard of, and then went back and watched a film, and I was impressed. And that is UAB wide receiver Iverson Hooks, named after, I'm assuming, the great guard from Georgetown University and the Philadelphia 76ers. But, man, this dude right here went off on Memphis. 11 catches, 172 yards, 3 touchdowns from the slot. Not the biggest guy in the world, but, man, he was an impressive player.
Wild man of the week here.
Yeah, no, he was really, really dominant in this game. I just watched like the broadcast highlights, which we aren't showing here, but the announcers were just losing their mind watching this guy, especially on the 3rd touchdown. He was incredible. He had like a 94 PFF grade in this game, which is how I found out about him. I always like to just like sort by weekly PFF grades, try and find some guys who jump out. 9 of the 11 catches he had in this game went for either a first down or a touchdown. Like this is a legit guy. We'll see if he can keep this up. He's obviously free of the I don't know what you want to call him, but Trent Dilfer, which was terrorizing that program for the last however long he's been there. So he's in his 4th year now at UAB, 5'10", 175 pounds, primarily works out of the slot. And he's just got an extremely high IQ. Watching some of these catches, it feels like now there's like 2 catches where he has one, the 3rd touchdown, I think, is an end zone fade, and he makes this awesome catch, just kind of smothered by the defender in the corner of the end zone. And basically every other catch outside of that, he's just wide open. Memphis is playing like a pretty heavy off zone coverage throughout the game. And like, I haven't watched the all 22 to really like figure out how, but man, his knack for just like finding the soft spots in that zone, it was really fun to watch, because it's every play the camera pans over and he's just wide open in the middle of a huge spot of grass. So really good player, I think.
How about the interim head coach taking over at UAB, Alex Mortensen? Now, Clay, this may be a little before your time, but Chris Mortensen, and my time growing up, I know D also was the great ESPN insider. He was kind of like Schefter before Schefter moved from NFL Network to ESPN, and his son Alex Mortensen led them to the win. He looks just like his dad.
Yeah, it's crazy. And after seeing Neuheisel's son, right? So it's been a good time for interim sons. But this kid,
even though Neuheisel's not the head coach, let's keep that in mind.
Right.
Tim Skipper.
Poor Tim Skipper, man.
You get confused, man. But from Montgomery, Alabama, played on the same Pike Road team as Quinshon Judkins, now balling for the Cleveland Browns. Montgomery, Alabama, home of Hank Williams. Pete, your Alabama travels. You ever go to Montgomery?
Yes, Montgomery was that's Alabama State, man. That's where I signed my guy Titus Howard from. So the Gump, Gump, man. Montgomery, nice town. I've been all over Alabama. It's really, we talk about obviously Alabama, right, and Auburn, but the amount of talent that comes from the state itself is very underrated. You and I talk about this a lot. Ton of talent in the Mobile, Alabama area as well. So UAB. It's in an interesting situation, state school, but it's in a nice place in terms of Birmingham, right? I think you look at you go to Birmingham, relatively big city, compared to the rest of the state, and it is it's a place I think you can recruit to. So it'll be interesting to see who gets that job, D. Yeah, no doubt about it. And whoever gets that job is going to have to try to recruit Iverson Hooks, because, like Fink mentioned, he's a sophomore. He's a 4th-year player, but he's a sophomore. I guess he redshirted the first year, and then I believe he had an injury. So maybe that double redshirt situation. So he's got 2 years of eligibility. So you got to imagine that in the portal,
teams are going to want a slot receiver like this. He's had a good year with just one big game. He's up to, 41 catches on the year, which is pretty early for 41 catches. He's getting the rock, 560 yards, 5 touchdowns, just a target monster. You look at, he had 5 catches against Tennessee, 5 catches against FAU. Of course, he had the 11 catches against Memphis. So he's getting the rock. It'll be interesting to see if UAB's new coach is able to keep him, if he's going to be someone who maybe goes to the power 4 level as a wide receiver in the slot, and quarterback too, right? With Ryder Burton, who I know you're a fan of, Fink.
Yeah. So I've obviously never heard of this guy, but he spent his first year in college in 2023 at BYU, redshirted, didn't play. In 2024, he transferred to West Virginia, also did not play. So this guy literally has played 0 snaps entering this season. He played 1 snap in week 4 against Tennessee. I assume that's garbage time. UAB makes the quarterback change in this week, and he goes in his first start, basically his first ever college play at all. He goes 20 for 27, 74%, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 91.6 passing grade. They might have found someone. He looked really good on some of those throws. He's got really pinpoint accuracy, I think. So we'll see. Somebody to watch. I guess he's got he'd be a redshirt sophomore now. So he's got 2 more years after this. That's a pretty intriguing duo. I guess we'll see how they continue to play together throughout the rest of the year because,
The interesting thing, too, is obviously Dilfer's a quarterback guy, but so is Mortensen. Mortensen played at Arkansas. So it is interesting that Dilfer, as the quarterback guy, he gets fired, and the next guy who's in line there in Mortensen switches to a new quarterback. So that is a little interesting. Yeah.
So let's switch. I'm going to skip ahead on the outline a little bit because I want to get to this guy, because this to me is somebody that we are very familiar with. Over here, we talked about this guy since he was a young player in high school at Dillard High School, and he's had a road, right? He's had a road where he was emerging as you had that year in 2022 where in South Florida you had Shamar Stewart, first round pick, Kenyatta Jackson, who's now starting for Ohio State, Marvin Jones, who's had a little bit of a road, but now is starting for Oklahoma, R. Mason Thomas, who was the best pass rusher for Oklahoma. And then you had Nigel Lee Kelly, right? This was a golden age of South Florida pass rushers, that 2022 class. And a lot of people thought that even with Shamar Stewart as the highest rated guy around, that Nigel Lee Kelly had the most upside. Top 100 recruit, ended up signing with Miami with Mario Cristobal's first class, had injuries, didn't work out, then had more serious injuries at UCF. But you look at the numbers, 44 pressures, 16 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks in his 19 games at UCF. So he's been productive when he's there. And then this year, 15.6% run rate. The pass rush is there, 19th in the win rate with 30.3%. And the physical dimensions are great. You said something that caught my eye, and I'm not pushing back. This guy could be a top 100 pick.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly looks the part in basically every box is checked physically, athletically. You can tell why he was a former big-time recruit. And this is just a guy who basically, ever since he got to college, he's had a knack for when he gets pressure, he's probably going to get a sack more often than not. So PFF doesn't chart like half sacks, but they just like charted as a full sack. He has 65 pressures going back to his time at Miami. 16 of those resulted in a sack. 11 of those resulted in a QB hit. That's a pretty high rate. He had 15 pressures, 5 sacks in his true freshman year at Miami. So high-level pass rusher. We see that he's got the run stop rate, which ranks first nationally this year. We'll see if he can keep it up.
I have an interesting picture here I'm going to pull up just to show, kind of where he was at a certain point. And we saw some Canes fans here on the chat, but look how much he's filled out. This is when he was dealing with his injuries there with Akeem Mesidor, Miami defense. This was a couple years ago, man. November 19th, 2023. Shout out to our boy Dolphin Derek. But you just see how his body was not where it needed to be. He came into college young. So I give him credit for getting his body right. Not only, getting right from injuries, but putting the necessary weight on. And, I think this just goes to show you, as again, we have a lot of Canes fans who are still on this stream. And people say, well, look at these guys who go elsewhere and develop. I think in general, man, at the pass rush position, guys take time to take a few years to marinate. So Elijah Roberts, he's another one who took a couple years to get going from Miami, ended up at SMU. These guys those trenches are such a position of maturity. Sometimes it's very difficult to a guy who comes in at a young age, hit it right off the bat. And then you understand in today's era, they're going to recruit over you. And nice to see him find a good spot like UCF and get himself right there.
Yeah. And, go ahead, Fink.
Yeah. So I think he might just kind of be turning it on at the right time right now. He had 4 run stops in each of his last 2 games entering this week, which is a very impressive mark for an edge rusher. And then in this week against West Virginia, 86.7 pass rush grade, 9 pressures, 2 sacks, 1 QB hit. So he's really seems, and a forced fumble as well. And he's got 5 forced fumbles in his 2 seasons at UCF. So yeah, we'll be monitoring that one because he could definitely be a wild card in this draft class that could really, really rise up boards.
Yeah, between him, it's amazing. Just you go back and look at that class. So Kenyatta Jackson, who's I think he's playing well enough to get drafted just on his traits. When you're starting Ohio State, you're pretty much going to get drafted somewhere.
I loved Kenyatta Jackson after the 2023 season. He was a rotational guy for them. There was some buzz he might enter the portal. I was super, super high on him.
Shamar Stewart already, first round pick. Now we're seeing Kelly do his thing. R. Mason Thomas, he's one of the best pass rushers in the country, so you expect him to be a high pick. I guess Marvin Jones, I mentioned he was starting at Oklahoma. I don't know if he's starting. I should have corrected myself. He's playing, and we'll see. I know you saw him at FSU, and he was disappointing last year, but a lot of these South Florida pass rushers, someone mentioned in the chat Elijah Roberts from the class of 2020, who's playing well for the Tampa Bay Bucks, someone who signed with Miami, then transferred to SMU. There's just a lot of these guys, man. Dallas Turner, of course, at Alabama. We know what Benito's doing. We know what Brian Burns and Bosa brothers Rousseau are doing. Of course, Ruben Bain, probably going to be I kind of buried the lead there. He's a year older than those guys, or a year younger. They were all the class of 22. He's the class of 23, but he's probably going to be the first pass rusher selected. So those South Florida defensive ends are really, really making an impact in the league. I believe South Florida right now is the mecca of defensive end play. So, Pete, let me know. Take a look. Which topic you want to hit, Pete? What catches your eye down here on the outline as we switch?
I'll let you guys. Brandon Sorsby. I mean, I would probably say he's the way it's looking right now. Going to be the most highly sought after transfer portal guy. Let's assume he's going to leave Cincinnati. I don't. We do this on our Kane show, but we can do it here. We will openly tamper out here, but he just has all the makings of a guy who is going to be courted by, all these top programs that need a QB next year. I don't know if you guys are seeing something similar. Of course, we understand that there could be other guys on the market, but early on, he looks like someone who's shooting right up the top of that potential list for me.
Yeah, so former Indiana quarterback, class of 2022 out of Texas. Also played baseball in high school, was 3-star, not even a top 1,000 recruit. He transfers over to Cincinnati. He's had a few solid years, but he's really taken that step this year and really is becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's got a 91.8 grade right now, which ranks second nationally behind Julian Sayin. He's 6'3", 235 pounds. And when I was looking for clips to show of him, I noticed that there was a picture of him like from this summer. I don't think he has any fat on his body. Like this dude is a tank, like 235 pounds of pure muscle. Mm-hmm. And this is a video from Corey Kinnan. He just wrote an article the other day about how this could be maybe a top 3 quarterback taken off the board in this year's draft if he continues to play the way that he's been playing, because he has the tools to be that, and he's been playing extremely well. 7.1% big-time throw rate, which ranks 5th nationally. 3.8% pressure to sack rate, which is second lowest nationally. So basically, when he's under pressure, only 3.8% of the time is he allowing that to be turned into a sack. That's an extremely elite mark and very, very important for NFL success. He's got a 64.5% completion rate, 17 passing touchdowns to 1 interception on the year. And then he's got 346 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. So he's looked really good. Obviously, Cincinnati dropped that opening game to Nebraska. They've gone on a 6-game win streak since then, so they're already bowl eligible, 6-1. They're kind of in the driver's seat for the Big 12 right now, and we'll see if they can keep that up. They've got Baylor, Utah, Arizona, BYU, and TCU to finish off the year. So certainly facing a little bit more of the real Big 12 teams. They're just coming off a game against Oklahoma State. So we'll see if they can keep it up. They've got a few other players that we've talked about in previous episodes that we like. So yeah, he's become one of the better quarterbacks in the country and might be playing like an All-American right now.
Yeah, I like his release, man. You mentioned the avoiding the sacks. I think the quick release is a factor there. And you said it, the portal, obviously this guy would have a lot of interest in the portal if he chose to go in. He could have gone in last year. If I'm him, I'm going pro.
Yeah,
he's playing well.
I was jumping to that conclusion, but I agree with you, especially the way the class looks like it's shaping up with guys like, Sellers not having a great season thus far, and still could be picked very highly here just because of his traits. But I think he's got a lot more people who will be questioning him. I think obviously Carson Beck, the book is still very much out on him. At last, things that were trending great for him, but I think after last week, a lot of those questions will reemerge with him. And I think why not strike when the iron's hot? Nussmeier, same situation. We've talked about how he is not probably physically as good as we thought he was, and then the season they're having is not going to help him whatsoever. Definitely looked like he should have left last year at this rate. And it's just not a great year for the quarterback position. So yes, thinking back on it, probably if he continues this rate, head to the next level. But I think if he stays, would probably make $5-6 million next year.
Yeah, I think he's already making one of the higher quarterback salaries in the country. I remember reading when Pete Nakos came out with that article, he was like top 10 for sure. It was well over
Deserved.
1 million, 1.5. Yeah, for sure. It would be pretty crazy if the top 2 quarterbacks selected in this draft played for Indiana at some point in their careers. I mean, and then you also have Michael Penix. Obviously, they figured it out now, but man, I think they had a few rough years there.
They like Alberto Mendoza over there too. Let's not sleep on him.
Yeah, so this is definitely an emerging player, one of the biggest stock up guys, I think, at any position through this season, partially because of his own play, but also, like you said, how this quarterback class is shaping up. I kind of question if Sellers should or will. I think he probably should return to school, transfer. That South Carolina ecosystem on offense is just so bad. Nick Harbor obviously has not really become anything other than a vertical clear out guy to open up underneath routes for the other actual receivers. The pass blocking has been horrific for the second year in a row. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
Speaking of transfer quarterbacks, someone who's already transferred, right? How about big number 47, Bear Bachmeier, 6'2", 225, 4-star composite, Stanford transfer after all the upheaval, ends up at BYU. Worked out because of the whole Retzlaff situation. The stats are solid considering his age, 1,300 plus passing yards, 62% passer, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, running the ball well, 8 touchdowns there. You mentioned had the nice hurdle against Utah, had a couple nice runs where he really showed some physicality and some upside. It's amazing because me and Pete were talking about the situation and when it happened with Retzlaff and that it's like, wow, this is happening right before the season. This seems like a disaster. And putting all the off-field stuff and like that part of it aside, we don't know the situation as a college football show. We're not qualified to really comment on what went down, but just from a football standpoint, it looked like it was a disaster. It ended up working out for BYU, ended up working out for Tulane. It was a rare win-win, and now they got a true freshman who they could build around.
Yeah, I was when the Retzlaff stuff happened, I was kind of disappointed because BYU has a pretty solid roster, and I thought Retzlaff was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12, and to have to move on to a freshman who transferred from Stanford over to BYU, hasn't even been there like his entire time out of high school. It was definitely worrying, but he's exceeded those expectations. Basically every like advanced rushing metric, like missed tackles forced, yards after contact, everything, he's like top 5, top 10 among all quarterbacks in. So he's been a really effective runner. That was kind of one of the selling points when he was a recruit. He was a low 4-star on the composite out of high school, 3-star for 247, but he's got a 6'2", 225-pound frame and carries it well. Isn't afraid to lower the shoulder. Obviously pulled the hurdle out this weekend against Utah. And you see here, I mean, he's the 4th true freshman quarterback to start his career 7-0. And that's, for the most part, pretty great company, 2 of the 3 guys. So,
P, you recruited out there in Utah. I don't know if BYU in particular, but I know you.
Yeah, I did actually. I recruited a few kids from BYU. I mean, I think, and I don't even know what you're going to ask me, but I think they're well positioned in this era, man. You get a certain type of kid out there who, listen, they're obviously guys will still leave and transfer in and all that. That's what this thing is. But you got to be locked in over there. It goes without saying. So I pulled up. This is one of his clips from. This is a 1-game highlight from high school, but. No, it's one of those places that you got to be about football, and I think that helps them in this era because once those guys know what they're getting into when you choose BYU.
And just the level of football, it always surprises me, and maybe it shouldn't after all these years, but just like seeing their high school teams, right? I mean, their high school teams are good. I remember when
well coached.
They came tough, as you see here. They came down to. They came down to
South Florida, right?
To play Booker T, right? And they were able to really, they lost the game in overtime. And Bachmeier's not from Utah, just to be clear, he's from California. But just those Utah teams and the culture around these teams is well coached, tough, and quite frankly, more athletic than they get credit for. This as California player, but look, if you're Utah or BYU in this case, anyone in these Holy War teams. You can go down and get guys from California because, Bachmeier was going to go to Stanford. Stanford fell apart. It looks like Stanford's trending up, but certainly there's a vulnerability there. These California teams all had their vulnerabilities, right? USC just lost. Who knows where their season goes? UCLA looked like one of the worst teams in the country. Now they're playing better. But I mean, it's not like these California teams are clicking in all cylinders where a BYU or a Utah can't come in and grab a guy like Bachmeier, be opportunistic, take advantage of the upheaval, and get really should be their quarterback of the future for the next 3 years.
Yeah, and I think this brings up a larger point to the fact that you talk about the great coaches in college football. Kalani Sitake's name should be up there, and they're very lucky that he's a BYU alum. Like you hear, and he played there. Like how many? You have Mario Cristobal, Miami. You have some other guys across the country who were in that same situation, but it certainly means more. And if you're BYU, they have some big money boosters over there. They are, financially in a good place. And if I'm in that region, again, you have to be a certain type of kid. You obviously do. And that is a part of what they recruit. And the culture fits are matching what they bring in physically, which is they got freaks all across the board there. I mean, they've got really good athletes. I mean, I think people like you're getting at, the people forget how much talent there is in Utah as a whole.
Yes. I have to point out, I think his parents are awesome. These are their children's names. So there's obviously Hank Bachmeier. He played at Boise State, Louisiana Tech, and Wake Forest, had like 8,000 plus passing yards in his career. Then there's there's Bayer. Then there's Tiger Bachmeier, who was at Stanford for 2 years, receiver. Now he followed Bayer over to BYU. And then there is Buck Bachmeier. So I don't really know what Hank did to make them upset or whatever, or maybe they just decided to get more creative because I think he's the oldest. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, Hank. I mean, maybe he's named after Montgomery, Alabama legend Hank Williams, right? Then maybe that's one of the greatest, probably greatest country singer, at least songwriter that has ever lived. So maybe they're just big fans of that. But yeah, I thought his brother was going to be a better player. I mean, he was a good player, but I thought he was going to be like in the NFL. Like I remember when you're an FSU guy, so he played FSU when he was a true freshman, and he looked unbelievable.
Didn't they beat FSU? Did they beat FSU that year?
Did.
Yeah, right.
I think so, yeah.
I thought he was going to just roll after that. And like you said, 8,000 yards. The guy was a good college football player. But I thought he might have been like a star of the game, which looks like
Yeah,
maybe
he had 406 yards in his first career start against FSU. That was to open up the year.
Oh, his brother looks like more of a runner.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that's a big difference.
I'll be right back, guys. I gotta handle something.
We got Honey in the house.
I hear it.
We got Honey in the house. So Fink, we'll just go into it ourselves here, which is I've been saying that I thought the Miami Hurricanes had the best offensive line in college football. And I think they still have a very good case. Season's kind of halfway through.
They do.
But if you're talking about the other candidate, which was previously, in my view, number 2, and I might say they're in the pole position right now, is good Texas A&M based on their consistency and what they're doing. Number 1 in the nation in avoiding negative plays. I believe Miami's number 2 in that regard. And then the fact that they really stabilized this offense, which you didn't know necessarily what you're going to get with the transfer receivers, Marcel Reed, the running backs. There's been some injuries, kind of guys going in and out. But the consistent theme here has been the offensive line being just an elite unit.
Yeah, so coming into the year, there was definitely some hype for a few of these guys. Right guard Armaj Reed Adams had a really high PFF grade last year, 79.7. He had like an 85 run blocking grade. 79.7 doesn't sound super impressive, but for whatever reason, interior offensive lineman, the highest graded guy, is always like an 82. So he was a All-American for PFF last year. I think he was a preseason All-American. I'm not super sold on him as a player. He's 6'5", 325 pounds. He's played a good amount of snaps throughout his career. I don't really know if he's an NFL guy, but he's definitely a stable presence on the college at the college level. But he's got 7 penalties this year in 7 games, so that's something to monitor. All of these guys have allowed very low rates of pressure this year, so he's allowed 8 pressures in 7 games. And then I think this is probably my favorite of the group is Chase Bisontis, their left guard. In terms of NFL projection, there's another guy who might have a higher ceiling, but I'm pretty confident in Bisontis as a player. 6'5", 315 pounds. He's their left guard. He was a former top 50 recruit, number 46, and the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the 2023 class. So he's in his first year being draft eligible, so he could certainly return. He's got high-end athletic tools. It's not an overwhelmingly impressive frame or anything, but I don't think that's why he was ranked so high. Obviously, it's adequate, 6'5", 315, but he's got a really shocking amount of power in his hands, and you see right there that kind of reach block. He's got really good foot speed and a really strong first step, and they use him a lot as a puller. They like to get him out in space, and you can just see why he was ranked so highly out of high school. He's allowed just 16 pressures in 17 games over the last 2 seasons, and I have a 3rd-round grade on him right now. I've seen others who are even higher on him.
Yeah, he's got really, really strong hands. The guy he kind of reminds me of in this year's class is Billy Schrouth from Notre Dame, right? You're talking about like just tall, strong, solid left guards for really good teams. I know he just got banged up. I think he's out for a couple of weeks, but just like they're not 350 pounds, but they're long and powerful, and they're consistently physical, and they get the job done. There you see him, in space. To me, those two are probably the 2 best left guards that I've seen this season.
I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right, to be honest. I can't think of anybody else I'd put in that conversation. So this, I have a 3rd-round grade, but that could certainly change. It could rise. He could fall off a little bit throughout the year. PFF hasn't really graded him very high. They really haven't graded any of these guys particularly high overall. There's one guy, however, who has the number 2 pass blocking grade in the country behind Jordan Seaton, and that is their left tackle, Trey Zune III. He's listed at 6'6", 319 pounds. He was a top 250 recruit in the 2021 class, number 1 player in the state of Colorado, commits to Texas A&M. He's played a ton of snaps at left tackle in his career. 2,895 career snaps, almost exclusively has played left tackle ever since getting on campus. He's allowed just a 4.5% pressure rate in his career. So I consider anything under 5 to be a pretty impressive mark, especially for a left tackle. and especially when it's his career number, which is factoring in, being thrown into the fire a little bit earlier than he might have expected, allowing a little bit more pressure, and he's really dialed that in, as exhibited by the 94.0 pass blocking grade. So this is a guy I have a day 3 grade on. He's going to have to kick inside at the next level because he's over 6'6", but he has under 32-inch arms. So we all remember the Will Campbell discussion, and obviously that's looked pretty silly at this point. But Will Campbell's arms were about a full inch longer than Trey Zune, and he just doesn't really have the leverage either. So we'll see how that translates to guard. That's definitely a bit of a concern because you get a little bit more short defensive tackles you're lined up against at guard. So will he be able to win the leverage battle consistently at the next level? We'll see. But really, really solid college left tackle, maybe the most experienced college left tackle in the country.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I think and I got into this conversation on the later end of it. The first guy you were talking about was Chase Besantis.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a guy like him, man, with those athletic tools, gets to a testing situation, gets to a Senior Bowl, and he rises in a situation like that. Because with O-line, man, I think this is not backed up with evidence that I have necessarily, but I had, like, in terms of what I'm about to say, but I do think there is probably a larger gap than people realize in terms of like PFF grades and where guys are drafted at O-line, because so much of it is the physical tools, right? Like, there could be an offensive lineman that you can watch a game and really think that he struggled. He had some stuff that was not clean, but when these guys get into a Senior Bowl environment and you're seeing them up against other animals that are expected to be high round draft picks, if they can match up from a physical standpoint against those guys, the coaches at the NFL level are arrogant. And what do I mean by that? They're arrogant and they say, hey, this guy, I have a lot of stuff to clean up, but he has tools that I cannot coach. I cannot find these tools anywhere else. So I think with a guy like Besantis, he's one of those sort of guys that, he's already in the mix to be, sort of a top 100 type of pick. But I think he rises when you get him in one of those environments.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And on the PFF, I think for offensive line, there's good stuff there, and it's something you look at. I do find that defensive line to me correlates more with kind of what you're seeing, just in terms of like, hey, who looks like the best player, who do coaches treat like the best player, who gets drafted like the best player, who gets paid like the best player. That to me on defensive line, particularly the edge, correlates pretty much perfect. I mean, you look at the top edges ranking wise over the course of the year, particularly with things like win rate, that stuff. Usually those guys are the guys that are getting picked, in my experience.
And with O-line, and again, this has been told to me, as I'm sorry, the dog is going off today. We got the
honey making her group chat debut.
Yeah, the yard is getting done right now. But essentially, I will say this. I've heard this from multiple offensive line coaches and players. O-line is the position when it comes to PFF that there's the most difference between the internal grades. I'll tell you why. The PFF grader does not know what the communication is supposed to be amongst the offensive linemen. It could completely look like the guard let a guy just run right by them, or one of the tackles just, slid one way and let the edge rusher go in. But he may have thought that the tight end or the running back was supposed to help him out there. Like, we do not know what the protection calls are. So you have no idea whose fault a certain thing. Sometimes it's cut and dry. You just see a guy get whooped and you know that he lost his rep. But I think that's where O-line grades are tougher to decipher. And when it comes to and some of these guys have very high grades, but I think with a couple of these A&M prospects, they will be risers in this process as they get in front of scouts and they see them physically, because they've got some traits on them.
No doubt. Speaking of traits, we're talking about Demetrius Crownover. The right tackle, 6'7", 336, former tight end, high 3-star, but the traits really the star of the show, 35.5 arm length, 7.5 wingspan. He's got foot speed. Penalties are a little bit of a problem, 7 penalties in 7 games, but only 8 pressures. I found a clip of him in high school playing defensive end, and you can just tell it's just him just kind of running around being a long athlete. There's not a lot of action here. There you see number 1. This was 2018. How old were you in 2018, Fink? What were you up to at that age?
I would have been 14.
Yeah, it was a while ago, a young Fink and
Yeah.
a young Crownover. But you see the athleticism and the length here. Now you put the frame on him to where he's now. What would you have him at? 330?
336.
Yeah, so you could see how a guy like that would fill out into a real dude.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most. First of all, I've never seen Demetrius spelled this way. I had to spell check myself like 5 times trying to search his name.
Dwayne
up on
Wade
Twitter.
back in the day. I screwed that one up every single time.
100%. This is one of the most like prototypical offensive tackles in this entire class. This is a class that's really kind of lacking the true offensive tackle body types. I'm a huge fan of Utah's left tackle Caleb Lomu, but he's had a bit of a rough go of things so far this year after a really impressive year as a redshirt freshman last year. His running mate on the right side, Spencer Fano, he's about 6'4", 295 pounds, maybe 300, with short arms. He's a dominant player at the college level, but I do think he's probably going to be better fit at guard at the next level. Really, Francis Maui-Noah, there's a lot of talk about, is he a true tackle at the next level? There might be some arm length concerns. Caden Proctor, is the foot speed good enough to survive on the outside? So in a class where it feels like nobody can actually definitively play tackle, this is a guy who is absolutely a tackle all the way, and he's got all of the traits to match. I think something that stands out is I didn't watch his high school highlights, but we saw there he's clearly an athlete in high school. And despite adding about 50 to 60 pounds since then, I really don't think he's lost a whole lot of that athleticism. So I think about a guy like Emil Wagner, the right tackle for Notre Dame, who was probably the skinniest offensive tackle recruit you will ever see in your entire life. I remember he was on a visit to Kentucky, and there's a picture of him and Keontae Goodwin, who was a top 40 recruit, one of Kentucky's biggest wins on the trail ever. Ultimately had to step away from football, but that's a guy who's like 6'8", 350 pounds in high school. And you see Emil Wagner next to him, and he's got the height and length, but he was like 235 pounds. And now that he's added weight, he's up to a little over 300 for Notre Dame, and he's gotten clunky, I think, in his movements. And
yeah, we saw against
certainly
Miami.
Not the case here. Yeah. Oh man, I mean, that Miami game was atrocious. I think I dropped him 2 full rounds grade from that game just because he kind of got exposed and you saw the limitations, and that is not the case with Crownover, not at all. So he's really carries his weight well and has maintained that athleticism at a high level.
Pete, you represented a guy like this that grew in. Titus Howard's a quarterback, right? So it was a little different, but he grew into what he was. Oh, Pete, you're on mute.
He went into he played quarterback in high school, but actually played his first year as a tight end at Alabama State. He was like 215 when he was 6'5", 215 when he got to college. Was supposed to go to South Alabama. They had and play. They told him quarterback. I think he was going to play tight end. I think he would probably agree with that also. But essentially got in at like 215 pounds. Started playing tackle in an emergency situation in a game when he was weighing 245 pounds in his second year in college, and then was so good at that weight they said, "Well, you're never moving from this spot ever again."
Yeah, now
first round pick 2019. Yeah, so
yeah. I mean, I'm. Would you agree, Pete, that? I mean, look, we talk about Miami a lot. We do the Miami show, and we watch Miami every week. And I do think that offensive line, based on their level of competition, is in that top 3 at worst. But Texas A&M right now, it seems like they're making a run to be that number 1 unit, consistently performing the SEC and against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think you talk about how they're winning these games, right? With the not only the run game, Marcel Reed also not a guy who traditionally you think of as a pocket passer, right? So you're gonna just instinctively give the O-line a lot of credit for what they're doing there. But I think we talk about it. It helps when they look how they look too, right? Like we use a phrase that looks a certain type of way. It looks a certain type of way with A&M's offensive line, without a doubt. And I know that Joe Moore Award is something these offensive line groups like really aim for, really are like it's a team award, but it feels like an individual award. And it's, as offensive linemen they always feel like they don't get the publicity that they need and they deserve. It's something that they collectively look at as a major goal. And I would say they're in the driver's seat for it right now.
Yep. No, it's going to be down to the wire. We'll see how Miami finishes, but that's certainly the battle. Big game for Texas A&M this weekend. Could be, I don't know. I mean, so just look at the Texas A&M schedule. LSU feels like it's not a loser leaves town match because Texas A&M can take a loss and they're on the right track. They're very confident in their coach, but feels like for LSU, which is at home in this game, they lose that game, that Kelly seat becomes extremely hot. Their playoff chances pretty much go out the window. Schedule for Texas A&M brutal, man. You got LSU, Missouri, South Carolina, and you got Texas to finish at LSU, at Missouri, at Texas. So they've been living at home and doing well, but they already went to Notre Dame and won there, so they're capable of it. But interesting final stretch here for Texas A&M and the SEC.
Yeah, I don't have access to like team pressure rate allowed or like how often the team or the O-line is allowing the quarterback under pressure. But Carson Beck, this is probably the lowest rate in the country, is at 16% of his dropbacks, which is completely unreal. But Marcel Reed is at 23%, so he's not too far off. And those are both really, really impressive numbers. And clearly that's due to some high-level pass protection.
No doubt. And you hope the Moss gets better. With the latest report on his injury was, I think, that he was going to come back at some point this season. It was not a season-ending injury, but his ankle's banged up. So hopefully you get him back before at least, any kind of postseason play that they have. Hopefully for them, it's a playoff run. It is not the time where you want to be losing him because this schedule is really, really rough. But Ruben Owens, man, he's been balling. So that's the good thing about having an offensive line like this is that you can plug in talented guys at running back, kind of pick up where you leave off. You don't have to cover up for your offensive line. The offensive line is going to make other guys look better. Over 1,000 on. Remember to like and subscribe to Group Chat Sports. We are doing this on the 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I mean, we're doing this as many times as we can do, keeping you covered on college football, all the latest. That portal is going to heat up. We'll be all over that. Coaching searches, recruiting, you name it, and just trying to give you the latest on the stars, the unsung stars in most cases of college football. So appreciate you guys joining us. Remember to like and subscribe to Group Chat Sports. See you next time.